Poverty rate for Muslim households used to be 32% 12 years back. Today it's down to 2.4%. If you look at Hindu households, it used to be around 31%. Today it is 4%. Overall, of course, it is what I told you. Urban and rural. In fact, urban Muslim households used to be some of the poorest in India, close to 40% poverty rate. That number is down to 5.7% reduction, but also across different religious groups, also different social groups. Reduction in poverty in India has been universal in nature. And the reduction of maternal mortality for India, those are the blue bars. Do you see the difference? India is reducing maternal mortality more than twice as fast as the global average. A lot of it is fueled by the fact that we have resources today. We do have money to spend, governments have money to spend, but it's not just the money. In fact, if you look at data more closely, several problems are no longer all India problems. Maternal mortality rate, for instance, is a problem of 6 or 7 states of India. It's not in all India. In fact, 10 states of India have already achieved most of these SDGs. It gives you a sense of how vast, how diverse India's growth and development story is. This is infant mortality rate. On the x-axis, so at the bottom you are seeing, with increase in per capita income, what is happening to infant mortality rate? And do you see that all these balls are dropping? Whether these are the poorest states, the southern states, or the others, it tells you the speed with which infant mortality rate is falling, economic growth in those states. Some of the biggest improvements are also happening in some of the biggest. Look at the size of the ball indicates the size of the population. UP, MP, look at Odisha, absolute rock star when it comes to achieving some of these targets. Kerala has been at the bottom for some time because they have very good numbers. They already achieved infant mortality rate numbers are very low, nearly 30 years back. But look at the rest. This is what economic growth eventually is about. Now, as economists, for us, you know, one anecdote can always be pulverized by another anecdote. I can say things are terrible, and then you say, no, things are very good. So my lived experiences versus your lived experience, where is reality? That's why we believe so much in data. Data is not the all truth. Data is trying to get to the truth. But at least when you see it in large numbers and you see long-term trends, it gives you faith that there is something, this is objective, as truthful as we can possibly get in a society which is so diverse and large. These are the number of riots in India. Why am I studying riots? Because riots, the definition has not changed in the last 60 years. What is a riot? A riot is a violent episode which involves 5 or more people for a common purpose. It gets registered in the local police station. To the elders in the room, you knew just how many riots India used to have until 1990. In fact, the number tells you it was over 110 lakh, right? It's 110, so 1 lakh 10,000. That's the kind of rioting India used to have every year. Today, that number is, in fact, this is latest for 2021, it is close to 40,000. Now, of course, 40,000 is also too many riots. But you're talking about 1.47 billion people. Looking at the trend, what you notice is there is a structural break. Riots continue to rise. In fact, the decline only began when India's economic growth started. What you notice is, not everywhere, because there are 3 states, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Jharkhand, where the trend has not reversed. It continues to grow. But everywhere else, over the last 20 years, whether it is a BJP government, a Congress government, pick your party of choice, there has been a reversal in trend around 16, 17. State after state, around that 3-4 year duration. What exactly has happened? And there is a phenomenal paper in Lancet. It links it to the building of 120 million toilets in rural India. Because when we built the toilets, and I included, when we wrote about going open defecation free, we tried to articulate and make a compelling argument based on health metrics. That when you have very high levels of open defecation, we had 40% by the way. Next to India was France at 20%. But 40% open defecation is very high. And the arguments we would make is that the fecal matter finds its way into the water. So waterborne diseases, high neonatal deaths, all kinds of infection deaths, diarrheal deaths. So open defecation is an anathema, we must get rid of it. But almost all measures of outcome that we were pushing were from the public health perspective. The impact, however, while we have had almost all studies have shown remarkable improvements in NMR, MMR, infectious diseases, etc., crime against women. The fact that rapes reduced by 17% or 14% and assault reduced by close to 24%, it tells you just how gender access to toilets are. That's because women in secluded areas, particularly because that's when they would go out to defecate, early mornings, late evenings, dark, secluded, that's when they're particularly vulnerable. Every yellow dot indicates 1,000 middle class households, and every green dot indicates 1,000 rich households. Just look at how wealth is distributed. And tell me, does India have a north-south divide in terms of wealth? Well, there is a divide. I can draw a line from Srinagar to Kanyakumari. In fact, poverty is overwhelmingly concentrated in the eastern part of the country. Okay, so that is how policy then, and NREGA in Bihar is very different from NREGA in Gujarat. You are not going to find labor to do that kind of unskilled work. It doesn't make sense to have this kind of policies. So this is not random. This is not because the western half of our country is particularly industrious or particularly lucky. There are many things in the past that have happened. One is, most of our natural resources are concentrated on the eastern part. And during the first and the second 5-year plan, it was consciously decided that the manufacturing or the processing of this resource would happen through plants which would be set up in the western parts. So most of our early industry, heavy industries, was set up in the west. And the nature of manufacturing and industrialization is such that industrialization begets further industrialization. This black box. There are two concepts in the labor market that we follow closely. One is unemployment rate and the other is labor force participation rate. Labor force participation is people in the working age group, so 18 to 59, that are either working or they are looking for work. That's when you are part of the labor market. India has struggled because our labor force participation used to be around 50% until a few years back. So half our population was neither working nor looking for work. So we have a peculiarly low labor force participation. Women, and now I'm coming to the women's side. Women are a large part of this, but not the whole. And I want you to hold that thought. We'll open this black box further. But the second concept is unemployment. Unemployment rate is people in the working age who are looking for work but not finding it. And what do you notice? That the all-India unemployment rate today is around 3.5–4%, the long-term average. But states like Gujarat, 0.9, Karnataka, 1.5, Chhattisgarh, 1.9, Kerala, 12.5, Goa, very high, around 10. So what is it about some of these states, which are developed states, mind you, but very high unemployment rates, 3 times the national average? That's what you have to now try and understand. And this one gives you a little bit of a sneak peek into what is happening. So it's wealth creation which is leading to job creation. States that are growing economically are creating jobs. It's a very simple fact. And the states that stand out, Punjab, Kerala and Goa, just look at that. low ease of doing business, high unemployment. We really have to become more business friendly. Now, in the labor market, we have another peculiar problem, and there's a very nice term the OECD have created called youth inactivity. The youth don't want to work. It's a global phenomenon, but in India, it is quite acute. Every state of India, look at the unemployment rate of people under 30, so 18 to 29, those are the red bars, and look at the grey bars, those are the unemployment rate of people above the age of 30. So what is happening at the age of 30 that everyone seems to start working? It's not the shortage of jobs then. You can wait now. You can wait for the ideal job. You're waiting for a job that matches your aspiration. You don't want to settle into a job anymore. But I suppose by 30, the parents are like, okay, now you better go and do something. All right? But there is something more, and that is a sinister part of it. There is something called graduate unemployment. These are all young people in this graph. The red bars are unemployment rate of young people who have graduate and above degrees. So graduate, masters, PhDs, etc. Their unemployment rate is almost 4.5 times the unemployment rate of young people who have school education and below. So people who are relatively uneducated, they're all working. And the most educated segment in our society today is very likely to be sitting at home. It's called graduate unemployment. It's common in China and in India. Along with this reality, all your industry survey is telling you the same thing, which is firms are finding it difficult to grow, not on account of inability to find financing or capital. Their biggest constraint to growth is skilled manpower. They can't find skilled people. Now, how can those two things coexist? They almost sound like orthogonal, no? They are like, it's a puzzle, that your most educated are sitting at home and your industry is not able to find skilled people. Labor force participation in India declined steadily from 2004-05 to 17-18. And that story you all know very well, because we have written and written and written. What you do not know is in the last 8 years, that decline has almost entirely been recovered. Largely in rural areas. But urban area, that is the blue bar at the bottom, urban area labor force participation of women was never very high. It remains quite low. It's in fact only 25%. People say, well, that could be, the rise could be because you are including unpaid work. But now suppose we look at the data excluding unpaid work, you still find that in the last 8 years this has reversed. Labor force participation of women in rural and urban has increased steadily. Is it high enough compared to the men? No, it is not. It's still a fraction. And that takes us to the real gorilla in the room. That why is it that today we have more, by the way, we have more girls in colleges of India than boys. 52% of those are STEM graduates, meaning they're doing what is considered hard sciences and maths and so on. So what happens that while women are getting more educated than ever, when it comes to labor force participation, we are only half of the men, less than half. And that really takes you to the bigger concern, which is we are still a traditional society. Women are still expected to work at home and take care of people, children and the elderly. So if you look at the time use survey, how do you spend a day? The time use survey is very telling. It's basically telling you that women in the working age group spend 5 hours taking care of someone, children or the elderly. India has 150 million people above the age of 60. So we have an elderly population which is expanding very fast too. And all that care and the care responsibility sits on the shoulders of women in the household. Now, the good thing is that household chores, cooking, cleaning, those things, as we advance technologically and as amenities become available, so we have electrification, we have drinking water, we have LPG, gas, etc., we can save on that time. So development and economic growth and better government facilities will mean our time will get freed up for the household chores, as it did in the US in 1950s. But what about care? Care is not something you can outsource. Technologically, the advancements care is very labor intensive. They don't have any time to themselves. It's a mental health pandemic. Now, what happens? Well, one is you opt not to then go out and work. That's number one. So despite all our efforts, female labor force participation remains low. But second, you are choosing to have fewer kids or maybe no kids. Your fertility rate is declining much faster than what you anticipated even 10 years back. Do you know that urban India has had below 2 replacement rate? 2.1 is the replacement. For the last 25 years, urban India has been already below that. So research on India is often, it's shocking because the real economy in India is moving so much faster than we actually have a handle on. Imagine urban India having lower than 2.1 fertility rate for the last 25 years. And also remember, no country in the world has thrown money at this declining fertility and reversed it. It's a choice. It's a conditioning. Once you have 3 kids and you go down to 2, you go down to 1, it's difficult to go back to 3 kids. So it's okay for politicians to say have 2 kids, have 8 kids. Not happening.